Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to today's Partner Web Conference. This is Fast Track Dynamics 365 for Finance and Operations Enterprise Edition Tech Talk. Today's topic, Expense and Project Mobile Workspace. Today's web conference is being recorded on behalf of the Microsoft Corporation. If you do not consent to being a part of a recorded session or not a Microsoft employee resource, we ask that you please disconnect your browser at this time. Attendees may access the web conference recording by the same registration link used to attend today's live broadcast. We encourage you to use the messages panel at any time to ask questions regarding content or to request support. To do so, please click on the messages button at the bottom of your screen, type your question into the white text box, and click send. We have presenters standing by to help you respond to your questions throughout the presentation. We also use that messages tab to post announcements to the audience. Please take a look there now for some important information regarding this event. Ladies and gentlemen, our event production team strives to be a leader in delivering online content. We ask that you please help us reach this goal by providing feedback. Towards the end of the session, a survey URL is going to appear on the left-hand side of your screen. Simply click that URL, enter your email, and select your responses. We appreciate the time you take to do this, and thank you for your support. Before we get started, we do have a couple polling questions that we'd like to ask. I'm going to go ahead and bring that first one up on your screen right now. It says, are you using Expense in Microsoft Dynamics? Yes or no? You can make your selection by clicking directly on the screen and then pressing Submit. We'll give a couple moments for those results to come in. Looks like they're starting to trickle in now. Excellent. And it looks as though 100% of the polling audience is saying no. Perfect. All right, I'm going to move on to the second polling question. Are you using the new mobile expense application with the July 2017 release? Again, just yes or no. You can make your selection by clicking directly on the screen. And here come the answers. Let's see, looking as though roughly 80% of the polling audience is saying no, with 20 saying yes. All right, on to the third polling question. Are you using Project in Microsoft Dynamics 365? We do appreciate you participating in these polls. It does give us some great insight into our viewing audience. And here come the responses. Looks as though this time it's a little bit more evenly split, probably 60-40, with yes being 60%. All right, and our fourth and final polling question, are you using the new mobile project time entry application with the July 2017 release? All right. And it looks as though overwhelmingly, I would say roughly 90% of the audience is saying no. Perfect. All right. Well, as I mentioned, thank you very much for participating in these polls. We do appreciate it. There's going to be a brief pause while we start the recordings. Hello and welcome to today's Partner Web Conference. This is Fast Track Dynamics 365 for Finance and Operations Enterprise Edition Tech Talk. Today's topic, Expense and Project Mobile Workspace. Presenting for us today from Microsoft, we have Senior Program Managers Sara, Schilke, and Annette Bruer. So without any further delay, Sara, over to you.
Thank you, Janice. As Janice mentioned, today Annette and I are going to be walking through a couple of our new mobile applications. First of all, I'm going to walk through the expense management mobile application that was released with our July 2017 release. And then Annette is going to go through project time entry. So let's start with the expense management mobile workspace. In previous releases, we had a very simple app where you could simply capture a receipt in order to attach that receipt later to an expense report or an expense report line. With the July 2017 release, we've expanded that application so you can really complete all of your expense reporting activities on your mobile device. So this slide just gives you a high-level overview of our capabilities that we have in our mobile application. First of all, you can still capture that receipt. The next thing that you can do is enter an expense, and this is just a standalone expense that isn't yet attached to an expense report. This could be, for example, if you were out and you paid cash for an expense and you just wanted to record that right then at the time of expenditure so you didn't forget about it. Next, of course, you can create a full expense report, and you can create that expense report with expenses that have been entered through the web client, the mobile application, or imported credit card transactions. And finally, if you are an approver of expense reports, we give you the ability to review expense reports that are assigned to you and approve or reject them in the expense workflow. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to show you within our web client how you publish the mobile expense application. So I'm logged in as an administrator, and so you simply select the settings icon, and from here I'll click mobile app. This is all of our mobile applications that we have in the product. I'm going to be looking at the expense management mobile application, and I have already published it. You can see that it shows that this was published. If it wasn't published, I would simply select the application, and then this button on top would say publish. Otherwise, if you are set up to do expense reporting in the web client, you are set up to do expense reporting in our mobile app. So there isn't any other actions that you need to do using the web client to get started using the application. So let's go into our mobile app. Log in. And you can see that I have a couple of workspaces published here. I have the expense management app. Select that. And I'm logged in today as Julia. And in my example, Julia, I've gone to a conference. I have some expenses that I'm going to be recording and then eventually submitting that for approval. I'm also a manager, and so I'll have an expense report to approve, so I'll do that a little bit later. The first thing I'm going to do is capture a receipt. So I have a receipt that I want to capture. I'm at dinner, and I know I'm going to need to include this. I'll simply take the photo. Of my photo. That looks good. I'll click OK. I'll give it a name. This was a receipt for the City Cafe. I could add any notes that I needed to help me remember specifics about that expense, and I'll click Done. Now this is syncing my change, so it's syncing my receipt back to the server, and at this point I could go into the web client and attach this receipt as well. It's available from both the mobile as well as the web client. The next thing I'm going to do is enter an expense. So I have taken a taxi and paid cash for it. I want to remember that I have this expense and record it while I'm out on the road so I don't forget about it later. Select the date, enter my merchants, my transaction amount was $15. I have my currency, At this point, I could attach an image or take a photo of a receipt. I don't have one and I don't need one for this expense report, so I'll click Done. The next thing I'm going to do is create the full expense report. I selected Create an Expense Report. This is showing me all of the expense reports that I have on file now. Going to select to create a new expense report. This is for a conference that I'm at in Austin. And I know that I have expenses that I want to attach to this expense report. First of all, I have my taxi receipt that I created in the application earlier, and I also have a number of expenses that have come through on my credit card. So I'll select the transactions that I want to include on this expense report and click Done. Okay, now they're added to the expense report. And I'm going to attach that receipt that I had captured previously to my City Cafe expense. I'll click the Receipt button, attach a receipt. There is my cafe receipt that I had captured previously. Click Done. The next thing I'm going to do is add guests. So at the City Cafe, I had one of my coworkers join me. I could attach a guest where I simply type in a name, previous guests where it will allow me to select from previous guests that I've included on my expense reports. But in this example, it's a coworker. And this is simply taking the coworkers from your organizational structure. And I had Aaron Kahn, who's a consultant, with me at dinner. I'll select his name. And now I've added Aaron as a guest on this expense. The next thing I want to do is itemize my hotel expense. Part of my company policy is that I need to itemize my hotel expenses. So I'll select that expense, and now I have the calendar where I can go in and select the date for each of the different itemizations. I have just my typical room rate for $125. And I also have room tax. So I will add my room tax as well. For $25.20. I have these same expenses, itemizations for each of the days that I stayed at the hotel. So I'm going to use the copy to next day functionality. I click copy to next day. I'm going to have to click Done to accept that change. They'll sync that. Now on the 18th, I have that same itemization, and I'm going to do that again for the 19th. And now you can see that I have my hotel expense fully itemized with $0 remaining to be itemized. I've completed all of the things that I need to do for this expense report, so I'm going to go ahead and submit it for approval. I'll click Submit, add any comments that I need to, and finally click Done. The last thing that I'm going to do is review and approve an expense report that I need to take a look at. So I see that I have an expense report from Tricia for $636. She was on a site visit. Going to take a look at that. I can see that she had a hotel expense, and as I said, company policy is that we need to itemize our hotel expenses. Going to take a look at her receipt first. Review the expenses on the receipt. Everything looks good there. Take a look at the itemizations. And I can see that she has her itemizations laid out. Everything looks good. So we'll go ahead and approve. This expense report is pretty simple and didn't have a long workflow, but you can look at the full history of all of your expense reports. So you can see here that it was submitted by Tricia. It was then assigned to me for review, and then finally I approved it. But this is useful for a lot of those workflows out there that have a lot of different levels in the hierarchy for approval. So with expense, as you saw, you are now able to capture your receipts, enter an expense, create your expense report, and finally approve your expense reports. And with that, I will turn it over to Annette.
All right, thank you, Sara. Hello, everyone. Today I will be showing the Project Time Entry mobile application. My goal today is to provide you with information so that you understand the setup that's required to use the application, and then I'll show you how to use the actual application to create some labor entries for the project timesheet. Before I begin, though, I'd like to just give a very brief overview of the existing project timesheet functionality to give you some context of the scope of our mobile demonstration. So let's start by looking at the timesheet entry process that you're familiar with in the browser. The first step is to create a timesheet with all of the labor entries for each day. And then once you have your timesheet created, of course, you submit it into Workflow, and then it will eventually get approved. And then once it's been approved, it will either post automatically or manually according to those project management parameters settings. So that's just the typical process, but now let's add the Project Time Entry Mobile into the picture. With the Project Time Entry Mobile functionality, you can add time to an existing timesheet, or you can create time for a new timesheet, which will automatically create that new timesheet back in the browser behind the scenes. This application's purpose is really for quick time entry. So for example, let's say that you are a consultant working for a client all day on a particular project. At the end of the day, when you get back into your car, you could use this mobile application to quickly update the time that you spent at the client's project while it's still fresh in your mind. So let's go into the client to take a look at some of the parameters that are required to set up the application. Again, I'll be logged in as an administrator here just to show you some of these things. I've already set up a worker, so let's go into payroll and take a look at that. I'll go into the worker. And as I do my demonstration, I'm going to be logged in as Tricia, one of the employees here. So let's take a look at Tricia's work record. If we take a look at the Project tab, under Project Setup, the required field here is this period code. In Tricia's case, she's a worker that will record hours on a weekly time basis, and this period code simply reflects how often the hours should be registered for Tricia. The next thing is that a username has to be assigned to the user. So let's just go ahead and look at that under the system administration area in the users. And again, I'll just filter down to Tricia. And the assignment is simply that a person, that worker that I had just set up, has to be assigned to the user ID. And then let's go ahead and take a look at the third piece of setup under the project management parameters area. So we'll go under project management, set up the parameters. We'll go ahead and look at the timesheet tab. You'll notice there's a new heading, mobile settings, and you'll see things here such as the category activity comments. You can hide these on the mobile, and it does exactly what it sounds like. It just will not, if I enable this, it would not show, for instance, the category on there. This will save you some real estate on the phone. For the purposes of this demo, I'm going to keep all of these enabled though. And then finally, I'll just point out, as Sara had mentioned, under the settings, you have to publish the mobile app. In our case, it's the project time entry mobile app that has to be published in order to see it. And then finally, of course, on the mobile application, on the mobile phone itself, you have to have the Dynamics 365 for Unified Operations application installed. So now that we have that basic setup covered, we're going to take an example, and I'm going to demonstrate two examples. First, I'll create a time entry in a period for a timesheet that doesn't exist, and we'll go in and note how that's created automatically for us, and then I'll add some time to that. So let me just log in here on the browser as Tricia for 1 second before we bring up the mobile. I just wanted to show you the timesheets that she has already created. So we'll go under Project Management, under My Timesheets. And at this point, Tricia doesn't have anything in the current period. She does, I believe. Yep, she has some time created for last week and for last month. All right, let's bring up our mobile app here. And I will log in. And here you can see I have the same workspaces that you saw as Sara was walking through. We're going to go into the project time entry area. And we'll choose time entry as our application. Here you can see a really nice calendar view similar to what Sara showed us. I'll go ahead and I'll select the action of new entry. And let's just go ahead and let's say that I'm at the client site, end of the day. I've worked 8 hours, and I'll select this project lookup. And I'll take the first project that's in there. You'll notice that we have a lookup on all of these fields, the category, activity. We'll make this a billable project for this particular activity. And you can see I have the internal and external comments. Recall that we just saw the parameter settings. I could have hidden things like the category or the line property or these comments. But recall that I left those enabled, so I am seeing those now. We'll go ahead and we'll select Done. And this is now syncing back to the browser. And we'll let this change happen here. And you can see on the phone app, it gives you a nice summary of that record. Let's go back into the browser for a second here. Let me simply refresh. And you can see now that I have this new timesheet for this week's time period. We'll go into it, and you're seeing the same thing that you're seeing on my phone here. We'll go ahead and scroll over a bit, and you can see that there's my 8 hours that I entered in. So let's go back now to the phone app. Bring that up. And I'll log back in. And let's go ahead and add some more time to this particular entry. Wanted to note that if you wanted to, you could edit the existing entry, or you could actually delete that entry right from here. I'm going to go back though to the details, and let's enter some time for tomorrow. And I'll just go ahead and say new entry again, and let's say it's 6 hours to the next project. And we'll click done again, sync that change. And now you can see by browsing through the calendar, I have something for Monday and something for Tuesday. And let me just go back in and we'll look at Trish's timesheets. And you can see now in this case, as I open this up, it didn't create a new timesheet, but it added this entry for Tuesday's record into this existing timesheet. All right, and that's really what I wanted to show you in the application. So let's go back to the slide for just a minute, and I'll do a little bit of summary. Looks like I went out of presentation mode. Let me just get back here for 1 second. All right, so to summarize, there's a little bit of setup that you have to do for that time entry mobile. You have to make sure that the period code is assigned to a resource, and then the user name is assigned to the user. There are those parameters in the project management and accounting area that you can hide things like the category or the line property if you need a little bit of extra time. And then I showed you a couple of demonstrations. The first one was showing you how the timesheet would automatically be created behind the scenes if you were entering time for a period that didn't have a timesheet already existing. And then I showed you how you could add to an existing timesheet. And of course, you could actually remove time if you needed to, or edit time that you had already placed into play. I want to remind you that for all of our features, you can stay up to date by looking at the roadmap that we have. I provided the URL there. You can see what we have released, what's currently shipping, as well as what's in development on that roadmap. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your time, and I'll turn it back to Janice.
All right. Thank you, Annette. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to take a moment to bring your attention to a link that I posted in the messages panel. That's a link to a short survey for this web conference, and we ask that you please take a moment before logging out to access it. We hope that you found today's information helpful, and if you enjoyed today's web conference or have feedback on how we can provide you with a better event, this is your chance to let us know. The survey scores are on a scale from 5 to 1, with 5 being the highest score possible. And with that, that's going to conclude today's partner web conference. Attendees may access the web conference recording via the same registration link used to attend today's live broadcast. I'd like to extend a big thank you to our presenters, Sara and Annette, and thank you, audience, for logging in and joining us today.